to Representative John Garamendi. He is the U.S. Representative from California's 8th District since 2009. That is a portion of the San Francisco Bay Area. He is a member of the Armed Services Committee in the House and ranking member of the Readiness Subcommittee and a member of the Progressive Caucus. And he is an advocate of arms control, negotiations, and nuclear disarmament, as I'm sure he can explain better than I can. Representative Garamendi, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank each and every one of you that are participating in this, because it is extraordinarily important what you're doing. You are part of what we have to have, and that is a broad coalition of dedicated people all across this nation and indeed around the world that are willing to spend a great deal of their time and energy and intelligence trying to figure out how to move beyond nuclear weapons. For me, I've been at this now for well over 40 years, back into the 70s and the 80s when it was a very hot topic. It's not today. This is not a major issue across the United States, nor is it a major issue in Congress. Although Senator Markey, Senator Merkel, as well as Don Beyer and I have put together this nuclear weapons and arms control working group within Congress. There's about 30 of us that have worked on this together. As we go into this new Congress, we expect to see that number substantially expand as a result of some successes that we had last year. And Senator Markey spoke directly to at least two of those, and that is the no first use policy and actually putting into the National Defense Authorization Law, that's now the law of the land, that AI cannot be used in the decisions making about whether to use a nuclear weapon. There are many, many pieces that we need to work on here. The broad creation of support all across the nation is task one. So thank all of you for doing that. There's specific issues that require our attention. Legislation, no first use, for example. And then there is the necessity to understand in detail what is actually taking place in the arms or the nuclear arms industry. And I'm going to focus for a few moments specifically on that. With the New START treaty, President Obama had to agree to a rebuilding of our nuclear enterprise. And that's been underway now for well over a decade. The result of that is that the United States is in the process of refurbishing, rebuilding, and building new nuclear bombs as a result of the $2 trillion enterprise to rebuild, modernize our entire nuclear arsenal. I happen to think that's an extraordinarily dangerous and an extraordinary waste of money. And so I've chosen to focus on one element of that, and that is the replacement of the Minuteman III missiles, which are in silos in the upper Midwest. There's some 400 of those missiles that are in place today, and they are operating on a hair trigger. The repurposing or the rebuilding of the nuclear system has decided that the Minuteman III must be replaced with a new missile and a new warhead because the Minuteman III is old. Well, it turns out it is old, but it is still viable. The problem here is twofold. The new Sentinel, the replacement missile, and the new warhead is a $220 billion project over the next decade. The Minuteman III is in and of itself an extraordinarily dangerous weapons system. The Sentinel, should it ever replace the Minuteman III, will, like the Minuteman, be an extraordinarily dangerous system because it is a system that is a use it or lose it situation. If there is a warning of a nuclear attack, the president has basically 15 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes to make a decision to launch those land-based nuclear weapons, or they will be wiped out by the incoming nuclear missiles from China, Russia, or wherever. That creates an extraordinarily dangerous situation. Those of you that have followed this over the years know that this situation has arisen in the past. The good news is somebody decided it really wasn't a true actual warning. It was a false alarm or some other element involved. So here's where I'm coming from. And that is the American Triad is not necessary as a deterrent. The other elements of the Triad, that is the nuclear submarines, as well as the airplanes, provide sufficient deterrence. Now, we can go into a whole long discussion about whether they even need to be, and some of the people that spoke earlier spoke wisely and correctly about nuclear weapons at large. But right now, the move to replace the Minuteman III is not only expensive, but it will continue a very dangerous situation. Now, the good news is that the extraordinary cost increase to the Sentinel created what is known as a breach in the Nunn-McCurdy law, which requires that the Department of Defense go back, restudy, and go through an entire process to determine whether the Sentinel should be continued. Unfortunately, the previous administration started that project, but did not complete the review necessary and required by law. Going forward, I think it is highly doubtful that the new Secretary of Defense knows anything at all about this, and it is highly unlikely that the Department of Defense will complete, as required by law, the Nunn-McCurdy review. For those of us on the Nuclear Weapons and Arms Control Working Group, we will continue to push for that complete review, because it is, in our opinion, and the opinion of anybody that wants to study this, that the Sentinel is dangerous, unnecessary, and because of the extraordinary cost, will deny the Department of Defense critical alternatives that must be addressed in the years ahead. For example, what have we learned from the Ukraine war? So looking at this in total, it is extremely important that all of you that are participating today continue to work in those specific areas in which you are presently engaged. I would also encourage you to take a look at the work that the Nuclear Weapons Arms Control Working Group is now doing and will continue to do, specifically on the Sentinel program. We have an opportunity here to delay or hopefully terminate the Sentinel program. Should we be able to do that, then the question arises about the Triad in and of itself. Now, do I think that success is at hand? Well, we're going to grow our coalition within the Senate and the House, and it would be very helpful for those of you that are familiar with senators or members of Congress that are interested in the nuclear weapons issues, urge them to join the working group. The more we have on that working group, the more likely we will be able to push policy in the correct direction. So with that, I think I'll let it go. If you have questions, I'll try to answer those.